Good morning or good afternoon to those on the East Coast, and welcome to the Modern Revenue Leader. It's our 2021 Remote Selling Playbook. We loved it so much the first time, we decided to add a chapter 2 because this is what we as revenue leaders are focused on right now. I know some people are just joining us. We're really excited to share with you some insights from some amazing modern revenue leaders here who are going to be sharing some of their secrets and some of their tips and tricks. And we also are going to be doing some fun interactive conversations and discussions using Thoughtexchange. So as we let people join into the conversation, I wanted to do a little bit of a recap of what we talked about in last year's remote selling playbook conversation or last month's. And before I do that, for those of you who are not familiar with Thoughtexchange, I thought I'd provide just a brief introduction before we get to the main event. So myself and Kelvin Joseph are our moderators for the event, and we are Thoughtexchange. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Thoughtexchange is what we're calling a discussion management platform. And that's why we love having these types of discussions, because we're focused on real, transparent discussions that help leaders find and create breakthroughs with their teams. And we believe that collective intelligence is one of the critical elements to get there. And we also believe that technology that helps us to mitigate bias and to make decisions that are as objective as possible is the name of the game. So we're really excited to have some leaders who also embrace some of these same tenets. And just to give you a little bit more on Thoughtexchange, it's a little different. You're going to get a chance to play around with it towards the middle of our session. But what makes it different? It is different than a survey or different than a meeting because it really includes all voices. So you'll get a chance to be in this, but the whole point is you don't have to limit the size of the room with Thoughtexchange because it is almost an infinite number of people you can include in a discussion with Thoughtexchange. It's not like a survey because it's really a discussion. So you will be able to see the answers of other people and be able to consider those as you're thinking about how you feel about a specific topic. It's not like a poll because it's really about helping leaders to get strategic prioritization so they can make decisions that have buy-in across their organization. And lastly, it is really focused on not just having the conversation, but turning the insights from those conversations into objective data-driven decisions. So we cover a wide range, if you go to the next slide, of different topics that can be supported by Thoughtexchange, and anything from helping organizations to align strategy, unlock performance, and really critically, especially these days as we're moving from we moved from in-office to remote and now to hybrid, really focusing on helping to strengthen culture and build culture in this new world. Today, we're here to talk about a really exciting topic, which is hybrid selling. And last session, we talked about a few things that were focused on what are the challenges you're encountering with remote hybrid work that you'd like to share with leadership and why is it important. So I want to take a quick moment to dive into what we learned last session, and then we're going to continue the conversation. So these were the top thoughts from the group that connected last session. At times, it's challenging to feel connected to all the fragmented conversations. A perfect opportunity to think about how are you making sure you have the right conversations with the right people and that you're connecting those conversations and not feeling like each conversation is almost like a game of telephone. So knowing what's working so that I can iterate and accelerate is really important. Second is aligning a leadership team and communicating high-level goals quickly. So there's not as much time, in terms of the water cooler chat to propel opportunities. So how do you do that in the new world? And then, again, all of us have been dealing with this for the last year and a half. The days are long and it's really hard to separate your work from your personal life when your office is either your living room, your bedroom, maybe you have a home office. So I think those three, and then the last one I'll touch on is what is the most effective way to retain engagement in the virtual platform? And that's a really good segue to today's conversation. So without further ado, I want to introduce Kel Joseph, who is the CEO of Cool Kel Marketing. And he's been the CFO, he's been a COO, he's been a CMO, and he has spent the majority of his career advising CEOs and helping leaders maximize their revenues. So he's passionate about bringing business thought leaders together to share insights and to co-create. And that's why when he and I were talking about pulling together modern revenue leaders, he jumped at the opportunity to collaborate with us and bring in some amazing leaders. And so without further ado, I'm going to invite Kel to the virtual stage, and he's going to set the table for this action-packed hour that we have ahead of us.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I am super excited to be here. I just feel good. I got the white on white going, Cool Cal marketing t-shirt. I'm just feeling good. And one of the things that I think is so important is that we make friends before we need anything. And part of doing that is adding value to people. And the leaders that we have here today are at the top of their game. They don't need to be here. They're busy, but they give. And that's why they're so successful. True leaders share their success. So imagine if you could have the greatest minds that are growing the biggest companies in the world, just tell you their secrets, just give you their best practices. That's amazing. And that's the kind of value that we're bringing to you today. And the funny thing about the topic, remote selling, hybrid selling, think about it. Nobody wants to go back to normal. At first, we were fighting to get back to normal. Now, no one even wants to go back to normal. But for people that are in the relationship business, where it was a lot of travel, it was a lot of events, what do? How do we build these great relationships that we know are going to make or break the growth of our companies? That's why we created the Modern Revenue Leader event series. And here's another secret, right? We didn't just create the Modern Revenue Leader to give you tremendous value. We actually wanted to bring a group of these great leaders together as well. So selfishly, we're bringing together all 20 of the Modern Revenue Leaders for a private event. And we will share some of the content from that private event, but we're bringing them all together because that's what we want. We want to meet with C-level executives and we want to take our companies forward. So we thank you so much for being here. Now, we believe in getting off to an amazing start. So we have Sekou Kalin, who is the managing director, head of consumer banking for the Northeast for JP Morgan Chase. But not only that, he has over 2 decades of experience on Wall Street. On top of that, he has client relationships that are from the startup stage. He's taken people to scaling their business and even some turnarounds. And he's just an overall great guy. He is the one who started Advancing Black Pathways at JP Morgan Chase. And he's a friend, Inroads board member. The guy's amazing. I was just telling him earlier today, I was like, in the middle of a pandemic, this guy had one of the best years I've ever seen. Sekou Kalin, you are a Modern Revenue Leader and you have our attention.
Well, I feel like I should take a couple minutes to find this person you're describing, but if I can't, I'll just try to fill in. No, thank you for the generous introduction. I want to begin by thanking you and your team even for having the vision to create this platform, Thoughtexchange, aptly named, to really give the opportunity for people to share ideas and best practices. So since we have such a distinguished group of panelists, I actually went to college with Thomas, we have Felipe and Michael, I'm going to save the most profound insights for them to cover. So instead, I'll just warm up. I'll be the appetizer. They're going to give you all of the truly thought-provoking stuff. What I wanted to share is really 3 things, and I think they apply in a new normal, an old normal, in a hybrid, whatever scenario we're in. And so as I think about leadership, as I think about the 10,000 employees I'm privileged to manage, as I think about the millions of customers we serve, in order to do that, there's some simple things that I feel remain pertinent today as it did yesterday. And the first I would say is again, this shouldn't be some great epiphany, but it might be. I'll give my twist on insights on it. But just one, know your customer, their behaviors, the trends in your markets, and your employees. Given that we're in this again, new normal, and we could spend this whole hour describing what a new normal is, because it impacts different businesses in different ways. But understanding like what your customers want to do differently as a result will also influence how your employees will need to engage differently, or how you need to empower your employees. What investments do you need to make, right? What training do you need to have? So the first, again, quite simplistic, obviously, is recognize what changes have occurred in those buying behaviors, whether it's how people want to shop, how they want to show up, how they want to engage, and then recognize what's that pull through. What are you doing differently to show up as an organization to meet the needs of your customers? How have you evolved with basically what I just said? So that's the first thing, and the way I look at that, just to give an example. We have almost 1,000 branches in the Northeast, and the majority were open during COVID, right? So we had to think, quickly, how do you, for customers that still want to come in, how do you ensure that they feel safe and that your employees are also safe, right? So that ability to try to anticipate, to recognize what challenges are, overlaying local regulations, et cetera. I'm just glad we're not in that period anymore. I'll just leave it at that. But the bigger point is, you have to be flexible and able to adapt quickly so you don't miss the moment. The second thing I would say, again, these are very simplistic notions, just leading with empathy, right? So as you look at numbers, and numbers matter, right? Numbers are important, but what's the human overlay, right? Because my data may tell me that I should or shouldn't do something, right? And based on the data, that may be supported, but if I do a human overlay and recognize what are other nuances that may be at play that can't be picked up in the data. So for instance, let's say I'm building a new location to serve, clients. If I only went by, 2020 data on housing prices and commercial developments, et cetera, and in March, they just announced a new, development that's going to be multi-dimensional, businesses, offices, et cetera. My older data may have said, don't do it, right? So again, that's a simplistic example. But even in some of the things we want to execute, whether it's your calling campaigns, et cetera, where are your listening posts? How do you ensure that you're translating, what you want to actually achieve to your employees, and that it then reaches the end customer in a way that is consistent with their needs, right? So that becomes a big thing, because sometimes, you can think of these grandiose, incredible ideas, but then the actual implementation or execution misses the mark because you didn't have the right listening post to recognize that while it sounds good on paper, the actual implementation of it is an entirely different thing. And that leads me to my third. I'm mindful of the time, so I don't want to take too much time. So again, I'm a simple country boy, so here are my three simplistic things. That third piece is, how do you just ensure that your strategy, your updates, your innovations are communicated clearly to your employees and your customers, right? So if you're going in a different direction, right now, it's not to say that you're going to say, here, customer, here's how we're evolving our entire business. But if you're not talking to the customers and bringing people on the journey, if they're coming in for X and now you've pivoted to Y, what are the implications for your business, right? And so that's why it becomes critical that it's not just a pronouncement from on high, here's what we're doing, but that you actually, going back to listening posts, have your focus groups, that you test out the ideas, that you telegraph in advance, right? If I decide that I, want to expand in some markets and retweak in other markets, if I don't communicate that and people show up and I've put all my investment in another market, that may send unintended messages, right? So the thing I'll say before I pass it on is, as you think about leadership, whether it's yesterday, today, or tomorrow, you can't be disconnected from what people are feeling and thinking. You have to be both employee obsessed and customer obsessed. right? And without listening and having the empathy, it makes it difficult to actually execute on the strategies, no matter how brilliant they are, that you come up with, right? Simple things I do is you have to make sure you're giving people permission. So obviously we run a bank, the largest bank in the country. One thing that was important to me coming out of this pandemic, again, hopefully more out than we are in, is how are the people doing? What are your mechanisms to ensure that people are mentally, physically okay, right? I tell our branch managers, have you taken vacation? Because when you take vacation, not come back in, but actually take vacation, you give people permission to do the same. You give people permission to focus on self-care. And while that may not be the hybrid strategy and a calling campaign, et cetera, what it is the fact that if your people are worn out and you're not going to be able to keep them in this incredibly challenging and tight labor market. So I will again end by just thanking you for allowing me the platform to speak. Again, hopefully some of these tidbits will be helpful as you think about your businesses. But if they weren't, don't you worry, because Michael's coming up and he's going to give you more than I could have even imagined. How's that for a tee up, Michael?
Wow.
Amazing.
Unbelievable.
Sekou, thank you so much. I am going to employ your strategy of managing expectations, kind of under promising and then massively over delivering. So thank you for starting us off on the right foot. I had a couple big takeaways. The listening posts, not only do I, of course, very much agree that having those set up are really important. I really liked the analogy of a listening post and making sure you're continuing to kind of touch back into them. And the other thing that kind of connected to that is how do you continue those listening posts and checking in with customers and with your employees on a regular basis? It's not a one and done. I heard from you that consistency in leadership that's so critical. So thank you for being a modern revenue leader, Sekou, and thank you for starting us off on, I think, with a lot of energy and a lot of great insight. I am going to have the honor of introducing Michael Bright. He is the Vice Chair of Strategic Relationships at EisnerAmper. He oversees existing client relationships, and he's focused on really building new business relationships to help the firm meet its growth goals. For those of you who are not familiar with EisnerAmper, because I always like to make sure, it's the leading full service accounting and advisory firm, and among the largest in the United States. They provide audit, accounting, tax services, as well as corporate finance, internal audit, you name it. I want to make sure we can kind of firmly kind of root Michael's comments in the kinds of relationships they have with firms across the country. He also leads the firm's sports and entertainment group. He was formerly partner in charge of the New York office. And in addition, he's a member of the firm's executive committee. Prior to joining EisnerAmper, he was the partner at Ernst & Young for 20 years. Most importantly, though, he's got some hidden skills. He is very much a Renaissance man. I was doing a little research, and he speaks 3 languages at least. That's what I could find. He speaks English, which I think is what he's going to use today, and Hebrew and Spanish. So a very well-rounded individual, and I know an amazing modern revenue leader. So Michael, you have our attention. You have the floor.
Lauren, thank you. Wow, what an introduction. I don't know what to do. I'm very, very humbled, but Lauren and Kelvin, thank you. Thank you for this platform. And Sekou, you are a hard act to follow. You said that you're going to give tidbits, and they were, believe me, extraordinarily profound. And I'm going to take the same thing that Sekou started with, the 3 things that are most important to me, to EisnerAmper. When we came into the pandemic, we always said, look, we have so much technical knowledge at EisnerAmper, and we speak with our clients. We can't lead with our technical knowledge. We have people who are at home who might have childcare issues, an elderly parent. We have to go with our emotional intelligence, our EQ. And Kelvin, you might know this, our mentor together at Ernst & Young, the head of sales, Larry Charney, it came just from him. Lead with the EQ, which is almost the same thing that Sekou said. Be empathetic. Your clients are going through some challenges. Find out how they are. Show that you care. And we said that not only to all of our partners, all our managers, all of our senior managers. So that was number 1. Number 2 was that when I got the job as Vice Chair Strategic Relationships 15 months ago, it was only 45 days before the pandemic happened. And my boss, CEO Charlie Weinstein, said, Michael, I want you to instill a sales culture within the entire firm. Now, as a professional services firm, when we started out over 50 years ago, it was only the two founders that brought in the business. And later on, more partners brought in business. But as accountants, as Kelvin and many of you know, we're not naturally born salespeople. So what we had to do, we had to have a lot of training in sales. But still, when I came into the job, there was this notion that only the partners sell. And I eliminated that. I said, no, we can't have just the partners sell. We have people who are on the ground doing the audit, seeing the operations, speaking with the CFOs, the controllers, and finding out the problems and finding out some of the holes and how we could fix them. So instead of training 200 people virtually on sales, we trained 900 people. We wanted all our managers, our senior managers, our directors, getting those go-to-market skills in a pandemic, knowing how to sell virtually. So we changed the paradigm around. We said, instead of just the partners selling, we're all selling right now. And that has changed everything because now everyone has this business development mindset. And that's really what I tried to do. And guess what? Not only will we retrain 900 people this year, we're going to go up to 1,600. So that was number 2. And number 3 is we lead by industry. So I've always been a sports and entertainment guy. And if you really know the sports and entertainment industry, you're going to really connect with potential new business because they're going to say, hey, he really knows what he's talking about. We recently got one of the leading largest hedge fund launches on the West Coast. And why did we do that? Because our business developer not only knew the fund, but knew the bank they were dealing with, knew the law firm they were dealing with, and recommended a fund administrator. So when that business developer connected with the CEO, he knew exactly what he needed for the business. He knew all his partners. We developed relationship with the bank, the attorneys, the fund administrator, and got the client. So if you could be as wired in a specific industry in our business, that's the holy grail. That's how you win new business. You step in to the shoes, the CEO, you help them, and then you help them with their operations. Then all of a sudden, you don't need to sell anything. They want to buy things from you. And that's the manna from heaven. Once you have a potential prospect, you're not selling, they're buying from you, that's when you know you've reached nirvana. So those are my 3 things. I know they're not nearly as profound as Seku's, and I will leave you with that.
Michael, you're amazing, man. Listen, EQ, we do have to have empathy and that emotional intelligence. And you're right. Not just the partners selling. Everybody in there got to sell something. That's right. So also, when you're talking about leading by industry, listen, if you're not an expert and you're talking to the highest level of people and trying to sell them something, they can smell BS a mile away. So having that intelligence by industry is amazing. I think you really shook things up here because that concept of having your whole company with a business development mindset, I think that is a breath of fresh air. And some people say, oh, that's not my responsibility to sell anything. Well, if you want to work here, if we need money to operate this business. So thank you so much, Michael Bright. You are a modern revenue leader and you killed it. So now, after all of that information, we need a little bit of a break and we want to hear a little bit and interact with the audience dynamically using Thoughtexchange technology. So Lauren Kelly is going to facilitate a session and we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts.
Thank you, Kel, and thank you, Michael. I love you're winning when people are buying from you and you are not selling. Those are words to live by. So thank you for that. And as Kel said, we are now going to go into the whole group participation part of this, and I really do encourage everyone to jump in. It'll take you 2 minutes, really, and it's a great question because these are the kinds of questions that Thoughtexchange is best equipped to help unlock for leaders. And so here's one that I'm going to ask everybody. And to join this, you can do it in 2 ways. One is you can just use your phone and hold up your camera to the QR code. It'll take you straight into the exchange. Or if not, we will drop the link to the exchange into the chat. So you can do it one of 2 ways. Please, everyone, just start getting in there. And the question we're going to ask is, what does leadership need to know about hybrid selling that no one is telling them? And, again, I would say you can give me one thing, you can give us one thing, or if you have a lot, because I have a lot, you can put a couple more in, and you'll get a chance as you go through after you put your thought in or thoughts to look at other people's thoughts. So I'm going to start the timer. We'll have 4 minutes start to finish on this, and spend the first couple minutes putting in your thoughts, and then I'll tell you when it's time to move on, or if you finished, you know, I'll indicate when it's time to move on to rating some of the other thoughts. And just so, in case anyone is having difficulty getting in, just one more reminder, you can use your phone with the QR code and use your phone's camera to get in, or you can just use the link that was dropped in the chat. We got a lot of folks in there, but I of course love to see everyone in. Okay. And it looks like we've got a lot of participants, and some people are still finishing up putting their thoughts in. So at this point, if you haven't put in your thought, go ahead and finish up doing that so you can move on to rating the thoughts of others, because that's how we get to that strategic prioritization that is so so unique about this type of discussion. And then Drew, I think if you can move us on to the next frame. Thank you. Great. So now you can see this is kind of a live visualization of all the people and all the thoughts as they're coming in and getting connected in with other people's thoughts. All right, we got about 1 more minute left. So one of the things I like to do is see that we can get every thought rated, 10, 15 times. So if you're rating, just keep on going. There's a lot of good thoughts in here, and that'll give us an even more clean sense of which ones are the most important to this group. Okay, so I think this is a great moment to close the exchange. We had a lot of great thoughts shared, and this is what we call the Discover Dashboard, which is where we can really dig into some of the results. So what we'll do is we'll start with, this is just an overview. So if you just go down, scroll down for a minute, everyone did it in English. We do have multiple languages available. It's an interesting mix here. We've got a group that is almost half fully remote and the other half hybrid. So again, no one is in the office full time. Again, we'll see where that goes over time. And then I always think it's interesting, how confident are you that you are going to hit your 2021 goals? We've got about 44% of people who are confident, But then we do have, over half of the folks who are either somewhat or not at all confident. So again, there's continued uncertainty in the marketplace, which makes sense. And let's talk about then what some of the big ideas were. So if you go up, let's start with the word cloud, please. So word cloud is a great way to look at what changes. If you start with the numbers up there, can you click on numbers for me? This is what happened when there was just a count of frequency. These are the things that came up often: hybrid, time, teams, etc. How to manage and set targets for the hybrid team. Click on that for me, please. Emotional balance, deep relationships are key, all really important things. Now, when we look at what happened when people scored things, sometimes the results will shift a little bit. I think what happened is you can see the concept of hybrid really started to become less important than relationship. Time stayed really important, and this idea of what are the most important things in keeping people focused around the word key started to rise up. So I think that we can see that now when we dig into some of the thoughts, we'll really get a clean sense of what was most important. So if you go to thoughts real quickly, on this side, this basically takes all of the inputs and says, you can go down as far as you want. And it's always important to understand thoughts that were suggested but got low ratings. But what's really important is to be able to see which ones rose to the top. So let's go to the top real quickly. And the one that rose to the top, and I really like this, is continue to tailor your approach to your client's needs. This idea of trying to do things the way you did things before, even though we and our clients have all changed, and leading with EQ. We had some of our speakers address it right before this session, and I think it really resonated with the group. Emotional balance is the key to keep moving forward. So never underestimate how productiveness can be affected by struggling times. And again, we have all lived this firsthand, so it's hopefully easier for people to have empathy, but having to remind yourself of that on a fairly regular basis as leaders is certainly a challenge and an opportunity. And that last one, deep relationships are key. And both of our prior speakers, Sekou and Michael, both talked about this. It's very tough to start cold turkey with new relationships during virtual calls. So leveraging current relationships, either to cultivate them further or maybe to even use them as a way as an entree to new relationships, that seems like it's going to be part of the hybrid selling playbook. So I think there's a lot of richness in here, and what we're going to provide to all the people who attended this event as kind of a parting gift is follow up with a deep report on all of these thoughts. But we want to make sure that we have time for our last two speakers and that we give them the ample time and stage. So what I'm going to do is close off this part, and I think I have the honor of introducing Thomas Ransom. He is the head of sales and client experience strategy at Truist Financial. He currently serves as the head of sales and client experience, and he is also an inaugural member of the bank's operating council and the executive response operations team. He is a 20+ year veteran prior to this of BB&T, and he has led high performing banking teams throughout the Mid-Atlantic. And I'm from the Mid-Atlantic, so excited for that. His current responsibilities include leading and directing the strategic development, deployment, and reinforcement of the enterprise sales and client experience strategy. He helped lead the development of the Truist Difference, and as a marketer, I love that, and the Truist Integrated Relationship Management Program. He's a passionate client advocate, and that really shows through his leadership of the client experience and client first solutions teams. So without further ado, I would like to turn the virtual stage over to Thomas Ransom. You are a modern revenue leader, and you have our attention.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Kelvin, for inviting me here. Listen, you guys did something that many people haven't done, which is get me and my former classmate, Sekou, together. I followed him, so he's a couple years older, but I followed him to Sydney, followed him to Public Policy International Affairs Fellowship. So it's great to be on here with him. So let me just share with you a couple of thoughts. Seku's already stolen my line. I truly am a country boy. Okay, so I'm the first in my family to actually go to college and grew up in rural Virginia. And here's the first lesson I learned, which is relationships matter. People do business with people they like and trust. And so that's the very first principle I ever knew. And I've taken that with me my whole life. There are really two key things that I want to talk about today, which is it's all about the client. And the second one is living on purpose. And so here at Truist, here's an interesting thing. So you guys know, probably December of 2019, we announced this merger of equals, which is the 10th largest merger. Actually, it's the largest merger in over a decade. And so we've made the 6th largest bank in the country. So we announced that, and then what? COVID hits. So we're in the middle of building a brand new bank. All of a sudden, you get this pandemic. Now we've got to go remote. We have a time deadline on converting. Of course, we've made promises to our shareholders and our stakeholders, and so the world can't stop. And so what we've done are really focus on those two things. And I want to start with all about the client. You have to, in every business, center on one thing. What's your purpose? And that is to help our clients, whatever that tends to be. And then every goal from the top of the house needs to begin with that. For us, our number one goal on all of our scorecards is helping more clients through our go-to-market strategy. And so you begin with that. The hybrid strategy comes into place with this reality. You've got to meet your clients where they are. And so if you go home and go in a remote environment because you just have to realize your clients, some of them don't have that luxury. And so you still have to meet them. So one of the things we do is we made sure we built a voice of the client program that will capture how our clients want to be served. How are they feeling? Let's get that real-time feedback. So I survey and listen to over 1 million clients a year. And so that feedback then informs our strategy, right? It's one thing to think you are serving your clients, but unless your clients agree with that, and unless your clients give you the feedback to say the way you are serving me is a differentiator, it doesn't matter. So you have to integrate the voice of client program in that aspect. And then I want to loop back to the second point, which is living on purpose. And that is the most important piece. It's most important for a corporation to have that purpose, to live on purpose, and then as a team member, to know your individual purpose, your why, right? So I've had my own personal purpose statement. It's been on my work desk. It's on my office desk here, which is to motivate and inspire people to instill this sense of belief that you can do the impossible, right? That is my own personal purpose. It connects with our corporate purpose, which is to inspire and build better lives in communities. When those two things intersect, you get this powerful unleashing of potential. And so I'll tell you what I go around the country and as I talk to sales teams, I have five core principles that I think it's been successful for me. So I'll give them to you. This is how I lead. The first is gratitude. I don't think as a people leader, there's a better value to have than gratitude. This is the ability to appreciate, to let people know you see them, you see their circumstance, you see their sacrifice. You got to understand, particularly going through this pandemic, folks are spending more time at work than they ever have in an environment where they need to be with their family more than they have ever been. So you've got to show gratitude and appreciation. The second one, empowerment. No one likes a micromanager. If you hire me as a professional, give me the tool set, empower me to do the job. Huge believer in that. The third thing is clear communication. I think many times what happens is you'll have someone and they'll go throughout the whole year. Maybe they're not performing the way they want. You shock them at the annual review. No one likes that. Clear communication. These are your goals. Every month, this is where you are. Let's agree, let's align. Let's come up with a plan to move forward from there. The fourth one, accountability. If I've empowered you, I've showed you appreciation. Now we've got to be accountable to deliver what the corporation needs us to deliver on. And the fifth one, I think as a sales leader is the most important, which is support. No one wants the coach that is going to yell at you when you're down on the ground, you just got ran over, you just got scored on. You want that coach that's going to jump in there, get in the game, pick you up, get in the foxhole, give you some tips and say, hey, man, I saw what happened there. Let me give you some best practices. This is maybe how we might approach it the next time. Teammates respond. The energy is built when they know that that leader is in there. They're engaged. They're in there battling with them. So just want to leave you with those tidbits. Kelvin, Lauren, thank you so much for having me. Sekou, I didn't bring that much wisdom, but I'm happy to follow behind you, my friend.
Thomas, that was a master class, man. It is all about the client. Those relationships are so key, and we do need to meet them where they're at. But you killed us with the living on purpose, man. You really, gratitude, empowerment, clear communication, accountability, support. It's all about not just talking about it. It's showing people and walking that walk. And that's what we have to do as leaders. Thomas, Ransom, you are a modern revenue leader, and thank you so much for sharing your success. Now, we have Felipe Calderon is going to close us out. He is the head of sales of agency and ad tech for Google Cloud at Google. Now, when Google trusts you to head up something, you know you got to be at your A game. And we're so thankful that Felipe is here. Felipe Calderon, you are a modern revenue leader and you have our attention.
Kelvin, thank you very much. Lauren, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I also want to thank Sekou, Michael, and Thomas for all your insight. I think it's interesting because many of us have similar themes. I also want to thank the audience members for coming as well. This is a really important topic. It's interesting because there are all these different concepts, and I'll just bring a few that I've been thinking about and looking at the responses. I want to bring it into three different things, right? One is client focus, right? Client love, client focus. The second one is also focusing on the basics that we still need to focus, right? We're still in sales, we still need to go through that. And then the last part is reinforcing the wellness aspect of this, right? So let me start off with client focus. When I was in I turned on consulting previously, we worked through like mini pandemics, right? Because we're working with clients who were having a lot of issues. And one of the things that I learned is that the salespeople were the last ones to go, right? Because they're the lifeblood of the company, right? If you don't have sales, you're not bringing in the work for everybody else to do. So I feel a privilege and also feel a great responsibility to make sure that we do this for the company. And clients were extremely important to us. At the beginning of the pandemic, we had a little bit of a decision. Do we take our foot off the gas? How do we deal with it? What do we do? So we went into more of, sell via servicing, right? How do we work with our clients to address their needs? And a lot of the ways that I like to tell teams about how to make this effective is think about focusing on the client. So ask yourself the following question: what's in the best interest of my client? And in my case, I work at Google. What's in the best interest of my company? Then what's in the best interest of my team? What's in the best interest of me? And so that helps you focus and prioritize what are the things that are going to move the ball forward, right? The other part too, and we've touched on this a little bit, is other people are running through these challenges themselves. Over 3 million women have left the workforce. Less than half have returned, right? If you think about it, that puts a tremendous strain on families and on companies. So it's important to understand what we're dealing ourselves, our clients are dealing with that too. So it's important to treat them with respect. And I think one of the things that Thomas said, and Sekou, you referred to it, Michael, you referred to it as well, is gratitude, right? Oftentimes when we get into a meeting, when we're live, it's easy. There's a bit of chit chat. How are you doing? All these things. But when you're in a remote environment, it's almost like get right to business, right? And it's important to take a little bit of that time to check in with people. How are they doing? How are they doing with their families? How are all these things going? It can be a little bit awkward because it's very hard to pick up nonverbal cues, right? You're sitting on a Zoom. Does somebody scratch because they're bored or just because they have an itch, right? These are things that are really important to understand. So again, going back to what's important for my client, What's important for my company? What's important for my team? What's important for me? And that brings me to the focus, right? How do we focus? So I think all of us have different ways of calling it, but we focus on budget, authority, need, timing, right? And that helps teams understand, okay, what do my clients need, right? And so, one of the things that we try to focus on is with forecasting, be optimistic and realistic, right? If you're too realistic, then you're not going to strive, right? You have to aim for the stars. The other part too is, and this touches a little bit on the productivity, is prioritization. One of the things that's really important is you could spend 18 hours a day working. You need to focus on what you're going to do. And Seiko, you addressed this a little bit when you were talking about where do we allocate branches? Like, how do we think differently about how we're going to allocate resources? So it's really important to think, okay, what's important for us now? And then the other part, follow-ups, right? Kelvin, Lauren, your team, just getting to this point, the follow-ups from your team, fantastic, right? Like, it's really important. And sometimes when you're not seeing people face to face, it's tough to remember that, but follow-ups, critical. And then there's a bit of an internal aspect of this, right? Which is networking. Look, I know you had some panels from Google before. They talked about micro kitchens. Let's face it, there's different ways where people connect. They connect with drinks with clients. They connect at lunch. They pick up the phone. And that's very organic. It's easy for people to do that. They connect. Let's connect. Kelvin, you're in New York. Great. Let's connect. But what happens now? It's a very, very staccato, right? And so what I find myself doing is I tell my teams, reach out to people randomly, put time in, connect with them, because we don't have the hallway chats, we don't have the water cooler, we don't have the drinks with clients. Bring it out. And as we're starting to meet with clients, we've gotten to the point where our employees are reticent to reach out because they're not sure if I should do it. And this is the other part too, is that not all clients are ready to meet face to face. So it's important to meet them where they are, right? So that's the other part, that networking is far less organic. It's a little bit forced, but once you start doing it, it's good. And then the last piece I want to cover, which is wellness. I like to say you have to disconnect to reconnect, right? And so full candor, I used to be the type of person that when I went on vacation, I checked my email and I was like, I'll just do a little bit of work. And it would take me about 3 days before I finally said, you know what, the world's not going to stop if I'm not around. And what I've started doing recently during the pandemic is truly delegate and disappear, right? And the reality is the world's still here, right? Like we come back. We all think we're indispensable. The reality is we're not. But we are somewhat indispensable to our families, right? And that's the part that's really important is, and Thomas talked about this a little bit as well, right? We're working more hours. So what's happening is that we're working more hours. Like, it used to be I'd get on a train and I'd be home. I walk through that door and I'm home. That contact switching is very, very difficult. So it's important to make sure that you disconnect. So again, first of all, thank you for having me. I hope that the client focus, the focus on the basics remains, and then remember, to take care of yourselves as well. So thank you so much for this. Really excited that you're doing this, and I'm looking forward to September 9th as well.
Felipe, thank you so much. There was so much goodness in there. I would not do a great job of recapping everything, but one of the things that you mentioned during this talk, but didn't mention in the recap, which I wanted to maybe put a little more emphasis on, is how do you turn the organic into something that happens when you don't have some of those organic prompts or stimulants that you might have had in an office setting. And so I think your feedback and your suggestions around how do you, maybe it'll feel forced initially, but how do you put in place a new cadence and a new way of connecting with your clients, connecting with your coworkers was really profound. And certainly, at least as I think about, you're right. There are places where I've let that lapse. So thank you for that really amazing reminder. And then the last thing to just reinforce again, because I can imagine that almost everyone on this call has done the it's the hybrid life work thing from vacation where they're still plugged in. And, you know, again, I'd probably encourage everyone to take Felipe's advice and try it. I tried it actually last weekend and it was scary. I disconnected, but you know, when you come back, you have a renewed energy. So I think that's a great experiment to figure out what, as a leader, is your new balance when your commute is through that door behind you. So yes, thank you so much for those amazing words of wisdom. And I think a really amazing playbook for how to approach this new world of hybrid selling. We are super fortunate because everybody here hit the high notes and went through their thoughts in a hyper efficient way. We have a little bit of time for questions, which is not normal. So I'm going to grasp on that unique situation. And if you have a question, please drop it in the chat and I'll ask you to do it right now. And there was one that came in while you're dropping your questions in the chat, which was from Mitchell. And he asked if anybody could discuss very specifically setting client expectations and what you're doing differently in this environment. So I will open it up to anybody. Just come off of mute and let's answer for Mitchell his question on setting client expectations.
Yeah. Lauren, I'll take a stab at that. So listen, as I mentioned, we're going through this merger conversion, and the first thing and the biggest priority is client expectations, right? Because the merger is no good if you get there and all your clients have left you. So here's what my team does is we are laser focused. We have this relentless focus on communicating with the client clearly, concisely, and ensuring that they are aware of any change that will impact them. So in fact, one of the things we do is we monitor every single change that impacts any client in the whole enterprise. So as you might imagine, that's a massive number, but you've got to be that maniacal about your client. You've got to be that relentless about the experience that you will track it down to the wire. If it affects one client, then it's going to affect others. So having that commitment, the staff to do it, the focus, the commitment to understand and to clearly communicate and understand if there's a problem and then fix it. Because the whole point of having a client experience program is so that you can identify early problems, you resolve those, which boosts retention, and then those clients then become promoters. Your detractors go down, those promoters now spend more with you and do more business. So it just is smart to set clear expectations with the client of your expectation and then to fulfill it.
Great insight on that.
Great answer. Nothing to add to that one. Great answer.
Okay. Okay, here's another question from the group. With the shift to hybrid environment, what challenges, so we were almost fully remote, now we're hybrid. What challenges do you foresee coming up for your teams? What do you see on the horizon?
I'll jump in and take a stab at that. I think for us, being a global institution with a couple 100,000 people, you have pockets of the businesses that have different practices. So the branches we've been in, branches throughout the pandemic, corporate offices, not as much, but now everyone's coming back. So I think it's two things. It's one, that reintroduction, where people have to get back into their rhythm and their cadences. When I started taking the train again, it was just a different feeling, right? And so as a company, you got to recognize what are the things the anxieties that your employees may have, even though you may be vaccinated, but now we're in most of our places, they're masked, or states at least, where I oversee the teams. There aren't the restrictions anymore. And so how do you still create environments where the employees still feel safe and the customers still feel safe? And then I think, the last thing is the beauty of being together is that's where sometimes even greater creativity flourishes, right? That you're in the conference room, or I see you, or I grab a quick lunch or a walk to get a coffee. And I think we need to be now more intentional, because we probably have lost the muscle in some ways on developing our people. So when we're in person, make sure we're taking those opportunities, not just to get caught up on everything, but still focus on the talent. Are we ensuring that we're inculcating the values and the culture for this newer generation that's coming along, or people who had not been working and went to this remote environment? What are the intentional things we're doing to continue to create connectivity and community within our four walls?
And Lauren, I'd like just to add to that, because I totally agree with Sekou 1000%. But what I've seen, it's really all the development of people, the collaboration, the training. But someone also said, you know what, you see that, as a child, you observe, and our staff people observe. So when you're closer and you see a partner taking a client through an issue, someone said to me that proximity breeds professionalism. And I love that line. Proximity breeds professionalism. They see exactly what a senior partner, a senior person does, and all of a sudden they develop that. Because the way that I grew up is I had a lot of partners that I worked with, and you take your best positive attributes from all of them. But because I was close to them, I was able to then take stock of myself and build those up.
Great insights from and a great addition on that one in terms of how do you make sure even in hybrid you still have opportunities for proximity. One last question, because we have just 2 more minutes, and again, for anyone who has a thought, just came in through the chat, which is any hybrid selling advice for, in this case they said a startup, but I would say anyone who is looking to build a client base from scratch. So the idea of, we talked a lot about leaning into the relationships we have. Any hybrid selling advice for starting new relationships, if you have to, which we all do, we all have to get new business. Thoughts from this group and this panel?
So Lauren, this Felipe, I'll take just a quick crack at it. I think it's interesting because it ties in a little bit client expectations as well as working in hybrid environments, is being flexible to where clients are. Because right now, clients still need services, right? And what I found with some of the sellers is that they're very tentative, right? They're very tentative to make promises right now. And I think it's being okay to say, like, it's okay to go out and set expectations with clients, understanding that their needs might vary over time. But I think what's really important is to still have the basics, right? Still talk to clients, still meet with clients, still build those dimensions with the clients. Again, one of the biggest challenges has been is everybody sort of step back a little bit right now. Is lean into the clients right now. That would be my advice.
Love it. And I think, yeah, leaning into the existing clients and leaning in and not being as tentative, it sounds like, with new clients, and taking some of those risks to reach out, even though we're in a state of transition. Really amazing insights. All of you shared some wonderful kind of nuggets, and also some frameworks for this group to take forward into the rest of this week and forward into the balance of this year. So I first want to thank you, our panelists, and of course, everyone who was participating, for joining us today. I know there were a few people who maybe either missed a piece or, like me, probably just couldn't digest all of it real time. We will be sharing a replay of this in the next couple days, as well as providing a redux of the conversation that we had and the exchange that we ran, so that you can take some of those insights and put them to good use in your day job. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us, and keep an eye out and check out upcoming events. We will make sure that everyone who participated here is kept in the loop as we continue this dialogue, because I think one of the things I'll leave you with is it's not a one and done. It's how do we continue to learn and evolve our perspective as the world changes. And so I am so grateful to Michael, Felipe, Thomas, and Sekou, as well as my partner in discussion, Kel, for a wonderful session. And I'm energized to get going and put some of these things to great use. So thank you, and have a wonderful rest of the day.